I have a habit of getting ahead of God. And when I do, I find myself going and stressing and eventually thinking, where in the world is God? And the more I press, the more I seem to stress, and the worse everything seems to get. Now, it was a few years back I learned a principle in this life that really helped me, well, navigate through those times of life. I learned this very valuable principle that keeps me from running ahead of God, especially when life is troublesome, especially when life is difficult and stormy. I want to share that principle with you today that I learned. And I learned this from a kind of an odd event that happens in Jesus' life and the life of the disciples. So here it is. Jesus and his disciples, they're on a boat in the Sea of Galilee, and this terrible storm rises up. And this is in Mark chapter 4, verse 37. It says it's a furious squall, and the waves broke over the boat, so much so that it was nearly swamped. Well, that's a pretty serious storm, especially when you've got some experienced fishermen on the boat, and they're seeing this happen and they're getting concerned. And what makes this so peculiar is verse 838 tells us that the whole time that this is happening, Jesus is asleep. He's in the stern of the boat on a mat, crashed out. And this boat is about to sink, what these experienced fishermen believe is going to happen, and Jesus is asleep. So the disciples go and they wake Jesus up. And at the end of verse 38, they say, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Obviously, that's pretty serious if these grown men are worried, and grown men that have spent most of their life on water. But don't you care if we drown? That's a little judgy, don't you think? But I've been there too. When I pose the question to Jesus, it isn't "don't you care if I drown?" It's "where are you when I need you? What's going on?" And Jesus' response to their question / accusation, is this in Mark chapter 4, verse 39. Scripture says, "He got up, he rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' And the wind died down, and it was completely calm." Now don't miss this. The principle to be learned is right here. Leadership expert John Maxwell says concerning this situation that as long as the disciples assumed control of the situation, Jesus rested. You see, here is the principle that you can apply to your life today. When you control, he rests. He'll let you get ahead of him. You'll go and make a mess of everything. But when you're in control and you're trying to make everything happen in your head and you're stressing and pressing, he rests. But when he controls, then you have the privilege of resting. See, we can get ahead of God, and he'll allow you to do so. And he'll allow you to run ahead, and you try to control, he rests. But when you give him the opportunity to control, then you have the privilege of resting. And give him the opportunity to control what you can't control anyway. A furious storm, a furious squall, the realities of the storms that come into your life, you really don't have any control over them anyway. So, the principle you can apply to your life today, no matter what you're facing, is this. When you control, he rests. When you allow him to control, then you have the privilege of resting.